Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Welcome everyone in this part of our series of Introduction to the Practice. Today we will talk about the nature of the precepts. We have a lot of questions regarding the nature of the precepts, what they are inherent in our tradition. It is important to remember that precepts are actually quite universal. They exist in every religion. Every religion has some recommendation on how to act in daily life, to walk the path of that religion. In some religions, especially the Judeo-Christian religions from our Western backgrounds, precepts are seen as commandments, and you will go to hell if you don't follow them. Of course, that's a very narrow view of commandments, even in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And our precepts are not commandments. You won't go to hell if you don't follow them. Yet, you can create your own hell if you keep committing acts that are not advised by the precepts. If you keep creating acts that tie you to your own delusion, if you keep creating many knots and deluded tendencies and views, then you dwell in a world that is perverted and deluded. So it's important to go back to the root of precepts. Basically, precepts are advices, good advices on how to act, on how to create an environment suitable to cultivate the way of the Buddha, the way of attention, the way of our practice. In Chan, in Zen, we like to go at the root of things. Often we say that Chan or Zen is the direct and practical way of Mahayana, the essential way of Mahayana, beyond forms, ideas. So the first precept in Chan, in Zen, is the Bodhidharma precept of mind. It is the precept of oneness. The advice is simple. Do what is right here and now, beyond our own thinking and limitation, just doing what is right here and now. But that can seem very difficult in a more practical way how to express it. Well, the Buddha Dharma is very rich because it is actually expressed in a way that is more suitable to our minds and that can seem more practical in the three essential or the three pure precepts: doing good, not doing bad, keeping a pure mind. If we needed to put some words on the precept of oneness, the great precept of Zen, then we would say very simply, it is about doing good or acting in harmony, not doing bad or not acting towards disharmony, and keeping a pure mind or cultivating attention. In a more practical way, it is expressed in the 5 universal precepts, the 5 precepts of the Upasaka, of the layman, which are the basic precepts upon which all Buddhist precepts are built. These are very universal precepts. Don't kill, don't lie, don't have perverted sex, don't intoxicate yourself. These are very, very simple things to bear in mind, and they are not Buddhist per se. If you're not an asshole, you will follow them. It is not bounded by any religion. You can be an atheist and follow these pure precepts all your life, these universal precepts all your life. These are the precepts of being a true human being in this world. Now, if you want to explore on even more on how to practically in our daily life, in our every action, adapt the precepts, we can begin to regulate everything. And that's how numerous precepts were born. Something happened, and the Buddha, and later his followers, the great masters, invented a precept. To act upon a particular situation. And because life is rich, numerous situations gave numerous precepts. Until the 250 precepts of the monks today, and even more for nuns. But these precepts are very worldly precepts in the way that they are used to regulate a particular situation, a situation that may even not exist today. That's also why precepts are adapted. For example, new precepts sometimes are applied on how to use or not use money or credit card those days, or even smartphones. Can a monk have a smartphone or not? In our tradition, we are lay practitioners. Even the ordained practitioners are lay dharma teachers. And then we can receive, in plus of the 5 universal precepts, 5 older precepts, when we become precept holders or novices. And then 48 more precepts from the Brahmanet Sutra, a very important Mahayana text. But actually these precepts don't add anything. They may explain the spirit in which precepts are followed in different situations, on how to manifest these same essential precepts into our action. That is why we use many times the image of the mountain of precepts, because usually we are in the fog at the base of the mountain. We don't even see there is a spiritual mountain to climb. We are just lost in this or that particular situation, this or that particular precept that we should follow or not as a commandment. And we are seeing the faults of others and forgetting our own. And that is actually why we tend to forget the whole point of precepts. We lose sight of the top of the mountain, the great precept of mind, the great precept of oneness, which urges us to act in oneness with all our body, breath and mind in every moment and in every place. Now, following this little talk on the precepts, I would like to talk about the 4 minds and take that same image of a spiritual mountain. We could say that in our usual life, we dwell around the mountain, in the fogs at the base of the mountain, and we don't even see the spiritual mountain. Our minds are deluded. That's the first kind of mind, the deluded mind, the mind of delusion. We just act to work, to have money, to do what we like, to avoid what we don't like. And there is really nothing more than this, to enjoy yourself. But there is a spiritual mountain to climb. There is more to life than just creating more satisfaction, because we know that the nature of life is unsatisfactory. So we begin to climb the mountain. We begin to climb spiritual mountain, which means that we begin some spiritual path. We begin to concentrate. We begin to be serious in our practice, and that's the second type of mind, a concentrated mind, a mind of one-pointedness, a mind of great effort and great determination, but we are still not at the top of the mountain. A mind of concentration is very important, but it is still a mind of differentiation between what's good and what's bad, between ourselves and others. It is a step, an essential step. We need to walk that mountain, but it's not the end of the path, because it's an endless path. And then one day we attain in the form of another the top of the mountain. We have a great insight. We are one with everything, and we are at the top of the mountain, shouting, "Actually, we are one with everything. We are Buddhas." And of course, at the basis of the mountain, no one can hear us. But that step is very important, and we might have many insights in our life, many great moments like that of oneness in our life. Actually, only one can fuel a whole spiritual life. That's Kensho in Japanese, Jiangxing in Chinese, seeing our minds. This moment has the very same taste and Satori and Buddhahood, than seeing and living as a Buddha. But we don't end up the Eightfold Path with concentration. That's not the end of the path. You can't help anyone. It's great. It's the third kind of mind, a mind of oneness. But it's not the end of the Zen path. And that's why Zen may be different than other kind of traditions, especially spiritual tradition. Dwelling in oneness is not the end of our path. We need to get down the mountain and get back to the marketplace and act as a normal human being. No one could say he's a Buddha and has seen his Buddha nature, yet he acts in the middle of everyone and laughs with the children. That's a traditional image. That last type of mind is called traceless mind. A mind which there is not a single trace, a single speck of you that is left, a single speck of ego that is left, a true manifestation of the precept of oneness, doing just what must be done. Of course, we may want to act and manifest our understanding, our practice through our acts with traces of our ego. And that's part of the part. It's not a problem to actually try to manifest, to do good, to intentionally do good. But at some point, even that intention disappears, and we just do what must be done, because it's the right thing to do. So, the four kinds of mind, as we see it in our school, are first deluded mind, then concentrated mind, a mind of concentration, then a mind of oneness, and finally a traceless mind. To end this talk, I would like to talk about a subject that we don't like to talk about too much, which is generally translated as reincarnation. And we like to view it as rebirth. And to be able to talk about this, I will talk about the three phases of rebirth. First, there is rebirth of self. In fact, our self dies and is born again each day. Our self is a construction, a psychological, social, biological construction. And we can admit that certain traits, certain aspects, can follow us through cause and effect beyond our death. Because our acts make us survive through all the constructs that we contribute and imprint, participate in during our lives. So in a way, through our participation to all these social, psychological and biological worldly things, we survive after it. And each day, actually, we are reborn. The second kind of rebirth, after the rebirth of self, is the rebirth of thought. And many times the old masters, especially in Chan, when they talk about rebirth, they are talking about the birth and death of thought. What is it that is beyond thought? That is at the root of thought? Our true mind. And the mind I'm talking about is not a mind, as Wang Po used to say. It has nothing to do with mental or intellectual kind of mind. So that's the second kind of rebirth, the rebirth of thoughts in each moment, now and now and now and now. The last kind of rebirth is the rebirth of flesh. And we can apply to it a very atomical and scientific view. Actually, no Buddhists think that flesh will go out of the tomb. We are not talking about reincarnation, that's a very bad translation, but about rebirth. There are a lot of misconceptions about it, and indeed, when we will die, the constituents of our body will constitute something else. That's the great chain that we all know. So there is rebirth of self, of thought, and rebirth of flesh. Do I think that we will be reborn? That we will be reborn? I think it's mostly important to not cling to one or the other of these kinds of rebirths, to not dwell in a very atheistic, secular view and not dwell in a very religious, devotional view. All these are views. I think that all interpretations around rebirth are both true and false at the same time. And actually, the concept of rebirth is a great tool to cultivate humility and respect, and to just admit that we don't know. Actually, just thinking about it generally ends up in us dwelling in the word of don't know. Mingzhen used to say, well, rebirth, I'll tell you when I face it. And now, of course, she's deceased. And every day, the trees, the birds, the wind gives me the answer. But that's a personal answer. Personal koan. So every thought, every day, is a place of possible rebirth. Until we will all get the final answer to that great Kongan. No need to wait too much. We will all know the final answer. In the meanwhile, we should look for the art of life and death, just here and now, where we are. Who is listening? What is this? Just dwell in that not knowing mind and manifest your practice to selfless action. Really, the rest is only a philosophical mind trap. It's interesting to have that tools, that concepts, but they also can be a poison. Have a great day, everyone, and see you in our next part in this series. Amitofo.